Into it, Coach Colin News. Let's get right down to business. Justin Trudeau was in an interview. Funny enough, it's called CBC, and apparently his government pays an enormous amount of money for that. It's basically state-run media, if I had to sum it up. It's media that is financed by the government. And even in an interview with these people, the interviewer still got to the question of, why don't people like you? You would think that the interviewer would have to lay off of a question like that, but Trudeau answered it. But I'm going to show you that. But first, I'm going to show you another clip of this interview and how he was caught lying. Basically, he didn't want to give in to the things he said about the truckers and all of the names that he called them. He tried to discredit them. He tried to smear them, all because they were standing up for their rights. Then I'm going to be showing you some clips from Jordan Peterson talking about him, Tulsi Gabbard talking about him, Jordan Peterson again, and then an actual encounter that he had with a Canadian man. And then I'm going to show you even Jimmy Dore's show covered it at one point when he was talking about honoring or apologizing for honoring a Nazi, but he apologized in the oddest way. All of this video is going to be showing you exactly why people do not like Justin Trudeau. Let's get into it. Let's start here.
In the 2021 campaign, you used words talking about people, framing them as anti-vaxxer mobs. You talked about their racist and misogynist agenda. Do you regret using language like that, though? And do you think that that has added to how people think about you?
I regret that when I was talking about specific groups of racist, intolerant protesters, not everyone in the protests, but the ones who were shouting racial epithets and misogynistic slurs at my security detail and others, I'm going to call out intolerance and hateful language wherever it has. It is unfortunate that what I said was able to be that made a number of people feel I was talking about them. I have always been very, very careful to know people can make own decisions about whether they get vaccinated or not, that there's normal vaccine hesitancy out there in every population. And our job as a government is to try and encourage people to do the right things for public health. The fact that the polarization and the toxicity was so amplified deliberately with misinformation and disinformation is something that is a larger question than just, what I said on one particular day that was taken out of context. It's about whether Canadians are actually listening to each other and talking with each other and hearing each other and trying to remember that we are all in this together as citizens.
That's what he said. So he actually, saying that we're all together in this and everything like that, that was the old catchphrase that everybody used to use, but he very much was against the people who were against him. He did call anti-vaxxers racist, misogynistic. This person got meticulous receipts on this. He said, quote, "They don't believe in science or progress, and they're often very misogynistic and racist. It's a very small group of people that doesn't shy away from the fact that doesn't shy away from the fact that they take up space." I read that in my head and I'm like, that's not what he said. He actually said those words. They take up space. That's amazing. In another interview, he said there are small fringe elements in this country that is angry, that doesn't believe in science. They're lashing out with racist, misogynistic attacks. So this is not taken out of context. He literally said these things. Again, he's just saying, back to it, angry, that doesn't believe in science, lashing out with racist, misogynistic attacks. But Canadians, the vast majority of Canadians are not represented by them. And I will not allow those voices, those special interest groups, those protesters. I don't even want to call them protesters, those anti-vax mobs, to dictate how this country handles the pandemic. He was terrible. There was videos of him screaming about how people aren't going to be let on planes and if you think that they're going to be next to you on a train or a plane or a bus. It was crazy, the things he was saying, not to mention freezing bank accounts. So to say that this stuff is out of context is so dishonest. And it reminds me of something that Jordan Peterson said. I don't have a clip of him saying it, but one quote that Jordan Peterson had was, "I don't believe anything that this man has ever said is true. I don't think he's ever spoken a true word. Every single time he is in front of anybody, having any type of conversation, it is always pandering. It is always lies. It is always deflecting. Again, I've said it before. He's Gavin Newsom. That's what he is. He's Canadian Gavin Newsom. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. How could you be that young and be running a country worse than Joe Biden, who's 1,006 years old? How does that even work? How do you accomplish that? Here is another clip. Here are people asking him, being asked why people don't like him. Here, let's check this out. See what he has to say.
You personally. Why do you think people don't like you?
You know, I spend a lot of time talking with Canadians right across the country. I spent time this morning with construction workers, talking about the work that they were doing, building new rental units for Canadians here in Toronto. I think there is a lot of frustration with the way the world is unfolding, and that frustration is being taken out on people in positions of power. I get that. That's part of my job. But my job is to stay focused on the solutions that people are going to need, and that's what we're doing.
But what about you? I mean, we're both old enough to have seen a number of prime ministers, and I have never seen, the sticker that I saw yesterday in downtown Toronto running through the city with F. Trudeau on the back of a pickup truck, flags with your name and the middle finger raised.
Yeah.
Why don't people like you?
There is a level of polarization and toxicity that we see in a very visible way on social media and also in real life, as you point out. But most Canadians remain thoughtful and open and decent, and yes, frustrated and worried about their future. But I also know Canadians are good people who are willing to work together to build that future, and I'm part of that.
Amazing. Honestly, what's he going to say, though? He's going to say, because I'm wrecking the country. He's going to say, listen, I don't know if you know what communism is, but I'm bringing it into Canada. I'm bringing it by the boatload to Canada, and that's why they don't like me. And there's nothing they can do about it. Imagine he said that. I'd respect him a lot more. I'd be like, well, there you go. I'd be like, I understand now. I get it. Okay, cool. He's made his point. I'd be like, all right. See you later, Mr. Castro there. Let's get into Jordan Peterson talking about Justin Trudeau.
I've tried to steel man him, I try to put myself in the position of the people that I'm criticizing. I think he's a narcissist.
Do you think there's a degree to which power changed him?
If you're not suited for the position, if you're not the man for the position, you can be absolutely 100% sure that the power will corrupt you. How could it not? At the least, if you don't have the chops for the job, you have to devalue the job to the point where you can feel comfortable inhabiting it. So, yes, I think that it's corrupted him. And look at him doubling down. We wear masks in flights into Canada. We have to fill out an ArriveCan bureaucratic form on our phones because a passport isn't good enough. We can't get a passport. What if you're 85 and you don't know how to use a smartphone? Oh, well, too bad for you.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it's corrupted him.
Would you talk to him? Well, if you were to sit down and talk with him and he wanted...
I would, you know what? One of the few people, I don't think I would talk to him. Because, what am I going to say? Can you guys see this on the screen? Why does it say that? Why is that on the screen? After he honors a Nazi. What is this? Let me get that off the screen. But he's one of the few people that I would not talk to. He's one of the few people where I'd be like, I'm not interviewing this guy. Because he's just going to lie. He's just going to make things up. Same way I wouldn't sit down with Chris Cuomo. I'd be like, I wouldn't sit down with Gavin Newsom. They're all the same person. I would just be like, you're just going to make things up. Like, I can't do this. And the second that it gets tense, you're just going to get up and leave. Like, I'm not doing this with you. Let's get into this. Tulsi Gabbard.
Democracy he actually is.
We have a robust functioning democracy, and public protests are an important part of making sure we're getting messages out there, and Canadians are getting messages out there and highlighting how they feel about various issues. But using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome.
Okay. So here we have the Prime Minister of Canada saying that, yes, we have a highly functioning democracy and people's voices, the Canadian people's voices should be heard and they have the right and freedom to protest. However, if those protests are used to demand change in government policy, then no, that shouldn't be allowed. Just in that statement in and of itself, you got to wonder how this guy doesn't see the hypocrisy in his singular phrase. The freedom of...
That was former
Tulsi Gabbard, ladies and gentlemen. Another reason why people don't like him. He literally just said, if people want to protest to get government to change policies, well, I think that's a bit too far. Can't be doing that. Then what are you supposed to protest? What are you supposed to... What does he think the... And on top of that, he says that, and then he actually passed a law where if you are assembling... They don't want to say protesting. They say assembling. And there are people who are in the LGBTQ category and they are within, I want to say 100 to 300 feet. If they're within that distance, then you have to leave. And if you don't, you can be fined. I think it was $25,000 when I last did the video. So he's basically saying, we don't think you should be able to protest anything that changes government. And on top of that, if this group is nearby, which could be one person can be like, I'm threatened by this. This is making me uncomfortable. Everybody has to leave or they're getting fines, possibly jail time. I'm telling you, it's such a terrible place. Bill Maher's going to talk about that same thing. Jordan Peterson, again, talking about Justin Trudeau. Let's go.
The quote was about protests in general. It was something like, we have a vibrant democracy here in Canada and we value protests. But it was something like, but when you use protest to protest, to object to the policies of the government, I think you're going too far. Well, what the fuck is protest for, except to object to the policies of the government?
It was quite shocking, everything that happened in that protest, because they seized the bank accounts of 200 Canadians, and that was not amusing. And Trudeau has no idea what that did to Canada's international reputation. That was not a good precedent. Okay,
wait, go back.
Mm-hmm.
They seized the bank accounts of what, people who were in the protest?
They seized some bank accounts of some people who only sent money to the protest, like through Give, Send, Go, and GoFundMe and so forth. So.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So you didn't even have to be at the protest.
When you say seized, they froze it. They didn't take their money. They just froze it. So they
froze their credit cards. They froze their mortgage payments. They locked them out. So they locked them out of the financial system entirely.
That is creepy.
It's really bad. In fact, one of the banks actually apologized. There's 5 big banks in Canada, and one of them actually apologized for doing it eventually. They all should have apologized, but one did. Yeah, it was really bad. It was shocking. Canadians aren't sufficiently shocked about it, partly because they don't really understand what that did to Canada's international reputation. But it was absolutely, I can't imagine a politician doing anything more inappropriate than that, right? No trial, no real investigation. Plus, Trudeau claimed that the trucker convoy was financed by MAGA, Republican Americans, which is completely preposterous because, first of all, why would MAGA Republican Americans foment dissent in Ottawa? Like, even if they knew where it was, which they don't, and they don't care, and why would they? And so, first of all, it was the Russians. It's like, oh yes, that's the Russians' primary concern. And then it was like literally MAGA Republican Americans funding the trucker protests in Ottawa. It was so
and
ridiculous.
they were protesting vaccine mandates.
Yeah, essentially. But they were protesting the lockdowns more broadly, I would say. Yeah. And because it was really hard on them. It was hard, obviously. You were locked down,
So that's another reason. It's another reason why people don't like him. He steps on truckers, which is just the average working man, farmers who are the lifeblood of any nation that they're in, citizens, because he could care less about their rights and their freedoms. He is hands down one of the, and I know there's actual dictators who are doing really bad things out there. I know there's a guy who's like running Haiti right now, and apparently he's Haitian and he's eating people and all that stuff. His name's Barbecue. I know guys like that exist. But in terms of North America, and I'll even say the UK, there is no worse leader than Justin Trudeau. There is no country within what I just framed out that is in a faster decline than Canada right now because of him and what he's doing to the people, to the policies, everything. He is the worst.
Justin Trudeau.
That I just shake my head at that.
Okay.
Oh, man who capitalized without virtue on the name of his father.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, wow is right.
Wow.
If he had an ounce of character, he would have never run. I'm not happy about him. He had no right. Well, he had a right. He's a citizen. He can run. He didn't earn his name. Not impressed.
Why do you say that? Is this specific?
Because his father was very famous.
Sure.
And so that put Trudeau at a tremendous advantage with regards to moving into a leadership position in Canada. It's not excusable. You should move ahead on your own merits, especially if you're daring to do something like run a country. It's like, it's too, you have a moral duty. If you have the advantage of a name, you have a moral duty to supersede the accomplishments of the person who bore that name and gave it its weight before you dare capitalize on it in the public sphere. And Trudeau did none of that. He knows how to behave. He knows how to act in public. He had the upbringing for it. Other than that, there's nothing there, not that I can see. And if there was, he wouldn't have run the way he did. He's not an impressive person in my estimation.
Some strong opinions there, strong beliefs there.
When he appointed 50% of females to 50% of his cabinet, because it was, what did he say? Because it's 2015. It's like, no, quarter of your elected members of parliament were female. If your job was to pick the most qualified people, period, regardless of their genitalia, because they're leading the country. You pick the most qualified people. Instead, he abdicated his responsibility to make those difficult decisions and then wallpapered it over with this casual virtue of, well, I'm going to promote women. It's like, no, you're going to promote competent people, you weasel. No excuse for it.
Wow. He's like a father to Trudeau. I would love to see them sit down and have a debate. Not an interview where you're trying to be cordial, just a debate on topics. I made a video on my main channel. I think Jordan Peterson should have long ago run for Prime Minister of Canada. Like, he's really playing around, in my opinion. But, you know, who else doesn't like... It's not just Jordan Peterson. I know I got a lot of Jordan Peterson in here. It's not just him. Regular people don't like Justin Trudeau either. And it's a large part of the population. There are certain people... There's always people who are blue no matter who, right? So there is some of that in Canada. There has to be, because he keeps getting elected, right? But for the most part, a lot of people don't like it. Especially, I'm going to do more research into it, especially with this tax that just came out, where things just went up in price instantly. And someone in the comments told me it was officially started on April 1st. I'm telling you, man, there's a reason why Joe Rogan keeps talking about this place being communist. There's a reason Jordan Peterson's so upset. There is a terrible leader at foot. And the thing is, what's dangerous is that they'll elect anybody else. Anybody else who steps in, they'll elect. Here, listen to this.
Hey there, how you doing? I'm not shaking your hand, bro. You're a piece of man. Why is that, sir? The entire country, you got our buddy over there.
Yeah, but how did I mess up this country?
Can anybody afford a home in this day? You're charging people carbon tax. You got 9 V8s here idling for 30 minutes. Your carbon footprint is increasing. We're getting charged for what?
You know what we're doing?
It's
with
not
the
stopping.
No, we're putting a price on pollution,
right?
And we're returning it to families like
I don't
yours.
think so. You're sending it over to Ukraine, right?
No.
Yeah. You send it over to the guy that you were with that slaughtered his own country.
You've been listening to Putin, have you?
Putin? No. Definitely don't listen to.
A citizen comes to him and says, "You're sending money to Ukraine." Justin Trudeau is sending money to Ukraine. And instead of just confronting that fact, he just goes, no, you're just listening to Putin. That's Russian disinformation, and walks away. And it's funny because every time he's in public, you'll see something like that. There will be somebody with a sign. There'll be someone that comes up to him. All the time you see this type of thing. You see this with no other leaders that I've seen. Maybe because you can't get to other leaders. I don't know. But the distaste for him is very vast. I'll say that. Now, Jimmy Dore also had something to say about this whole thing. Well, not Jimmy Dore himself, obviously, as you can see, but the Jimmy Dore show. This is another thing of Justin Trudeau. This is another reason why people don't like him. He's one of those people. You ever met those people who just can't? They won't apologize properly for things. He honored a Nazi. There's a large population of Jewish people in Canada. They were all like, wow, what on earth just happened? These guys just honored a Nazi. And instead of apologizing fully and just outright, he decides to say this instead.
Now I believe he's Castro's son because of how irrationally anti-Russia he is. What, Dad, you like Russia?
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are celebrating commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast, unequivocal support for Ukraine as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it.
He just pivoted right to it like it was nothing.
That was incredible. It was incredible. He just went right to Russian propaganda. Don't give into it, guys. We got to stand with Ukraine. Yo, man, you had a Nazi inside of your building, and you applauded. You stood up, and Zelensky applauded. Like, what's going on here, guys? Come on. This is ridiculous. But, again, these are the many reasons why people don't like him. So whatever he was saying at that beginning clip that I showed you, there are so many other reasons. And he's acting like as if he doesn't understand. And it's because at the end of the day, this man's been co-opted. He's been co-opted by the World Economic Forum. His whole cabinet, pretty much his whole cabinet, 2/3 in Klaus Schwab's actual words, 2/3 of his cabinet are young global leaders and are becoming World Economic Forum members. He's been co-opted by an organization that operates in its own interests and is getting him to have the country move in their interests. He does things that are against the people, things that are against truckers, things that are against people's rights. He is what you would look at and call a dictator. He just isn't in full form yet. But the things he does time and time again, he's one step away from being a full-out dictator. And that's when he just decides that I'm just not going to hold an election. And I'm not overstating that. That is something that he will do. He's already formed coalitions with another party against another party to almost form this two-party system. And it's so he can maintain power because he'll have more seats. He's just done such backhanded things. So why don't people like Justin Trudeau? Well, I'm not even going to use those words. You've seen it. That is why people don't like Justin Trudeau. And I'm glad that interviewer asked him straight up, if not even for us, but just for him to start thinking about it. Why don't people like me? Why did my wife leave me? Why are there so many people saying F Trudeau? What am I doing wrong? Hopefully it affects him somehow, but I doubt it. Like, subscribe, share. I'm out.